The Fixed Liberty podcast is presented by the Fixed Liberty Project, where we explore the fundamental principles of liberty and morality upon which a free society stands and thrives. Learn more and sign up for our free weekly email newsletter at fixedliberty.com.
Hello and welcome to the Fixed Liberty Podcast. Today is July 10th, 2023. I'm your host, Ross Brown. Thank you so much for joining me here on the show today. Last summer, my family and I took a 2-week road trip from Wisconsin to the East Coast of the United States and back. On the second day of that road trip, the United States Supreme Court overruled Roe versus Wade and ended federal access to legal abortion for women across America. Now, I had a lot of time to think about the issue on that road trip. I was driving for 2,700 miles and about 50 hours of drive time. And last summer, I wrote 4 posts at the Fixed Liberty Project in which I shared my reflections on the subject. That said, those posts predated the Fixed Liberty Podcast, so I've never shared them here. 1 year later, my reflections on abortion, life, individual liberty, sex, marriage, equal culpability, political liberty, dehumanization, and exceptional cases remain relevant to our national conversation. So this summer, in 2023, I am recording and publishing my thoughts in podcast format for the first time in a 4-part miniseries called 1 Year Later, Reflections on Abortion in the Fall of Roe. This is episode 4 of 4, in which I will share my thoughts as originally published at the Fixed Liberty Project on July 30th, 2022. You can find the original post in the show notes for this episode at fixedliberty.com/podcast. Since the overturning of Roe, I have published several posts and now podcast episodes to reconcile my strongly pro-life position with my classically liberal beliefs and my Christian identity. Prior to this episode, however, I am yet to address 2 scenarios in which I do support choice for legal abortion. I will take this opportunity to further reconcile my thoughts. I support legal abortion choice in cases of rape, including incest, or in cases when continued pregnancy threatens a woman's life. Before I further reconcile my thoughts, however, I must emphasize the tragedy of abortion in any scenario, including these cases. Abortion executed for any reason always ends a human life, and that is cause for mourning. To support choice in these scenarios is indeed to support choice. A woman might choose to have an abortion, or she might choose to continue her pregnancy. It is an intensely personal decision, and an affected woman is wise to pray and seek counsel before making such a choice either way. If you've listened to the first 3 episodes of this podcast miniseries, you know that I am pro-life. And my pro-life position is rooted in my support for individual liberty. So it may seem paradoxical that my support for choice in these two scenarios, being rape or when pregnancy threatens a woman's life, is also rooted in my support for individual liberty. But a paradox it is not. Individual liberty is the freedom to live your life as you see fit, so long as you don't actively harm anyone else in the process. Abortion ends the life of another human, so it is generally incompatible with individual liberty. In cases of rape, however, a victimized woman's individual liberty has already been grossly violated. She has been actively and horrifically harmed by a rapist. A woman might reasonably deem a resulting pregnancy to be a continuation of the active harm imposed upon her by the rapist, so she might reasonably seek an abortion to end the imposition. Such action is thus compatible with individual liberty. I deeply mourn that an unborn human might lose his or her life in such a scenario. They did nothing wrong. They were simply conceived. Everything else the same. If I was asked for counsel in such a scenario, I would encourage a woman to choose life and consider adoption. But I also would tearfully offer compassion and understanding if she chose otherwise. Should a woman choose abortion after rape, let there be no doubt. The rapist who initiated the imposition of harm is to blame for the loss of life, not the woman. The unborn human becomes yet another innocent victim of the rape. In cases when a pregnancy threatens a woman's life, the pregnancy itself, sadly, becomes actively harmful to the woman. The Economist published an article in July of 2022 which elaborated on the implications of such scenarios, and I include a link to that article in the show notes for this episode. A woman might reasonably choose abortion in such a scenario to preserve her own life. In this way, abortion effectively becomes an act of self-defense, and self-defense against active harm is clearly compatible with individual liberty. Faced with such sorrowful circumstances, when a pregnancy threatens a woman's life, a woman might choose an abortion, and she is under no moral obligation to choose otherwise. Yet, such a scenario does not oblige a woman to choose abortion. In some cases, she might choose to accept the risk of pregnancy, or even choose to give up her own life for sake of her babies. The point is that she has a choice. Now, on a most personal note, I directly descend from a woman who chose the last option. My paternal grandmother, Mabel, was diagnosed with breast cancer while she was pregnant with my father in the early 1940s. While pregnancy itself did not directly threaten Mabel's life, her doctors informed her that any cancer treatment she received would inevitably end her pregnancy. Mabel chose to forego cancer treatment until after my father was born, and she later died from cancer when my father was 11 months old. Not every woman would make this same choice, and I would not look down on any woman who chose otherwise. But I am naturally, eternally grateful for the choice Mabel made, and I will thank her myself when I meet her in heaven someday. For these reasons, as a strongly pro-life, classically liberal Christian who supports individual liberty, I also support legal access to abortion in cases of rape or in cases when continued pregnancy threatens a woman's life. Abortions resulting from such scenarios still tragically end human life. Faced with tragic circumstances of her own, however, a woman might reasonably and justifiably choose an abortion in such situations. We are right to legally protect her choice and access to the same, and we are right to pray for the day when Christ returns and tragedy is no more. Come, Lord Jesus, and make all things right. Until then, help us to discern wisdom as we navigate through tragedy in this fallen world. Thanks for listening to 1 Year Later, Reflections on Abortion and the Fall of Roe. If you enjoyed the miniseries, I hope you'll subscribe to the show, and I'll see you next time.